to think that you can just figure it out on your own is oftentimes a really slow and painful process. For a lot of people, your blind spot is yourself. You just can't bottle your own brilliance.
Katelyn Bourgoin, welcome to Plans and Pivots. How are you?
I'm great, Jonathan. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Uh, Funny little bit before we got started, we had a plan and we had to pivot, so here we are.
Hmm.
But lots of fun as always. Katelyn, for the three people that don't know you, can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Katelyn Bourgoin, and I am a marketing nerd who really geeks out particularly about buyer psychology. And I've got kind of a storied background of different companies, different things that went right and things that went very, very wrong, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But today, what I do is I run Why We Buy, which is a media and education company. And we help marketers and entrepreneurs better understand their customers and know kind of the science behind buying decisions. And that's kind of piece one of my business. And I also run a strategic advisory service for entrepreneurs to build their personal brands called Unignorable. And that's something that we're actually in the process of pivoting, which maybe we'll talk about. But we used to run it as a group challenge, and now we're shifting to make it a more of a studio, kind of like strategic consultancy. So we're in the process of doing that now.
That's awesome. And we are going to touch on Unignorable in the conversation, so looking forward to that. Katelyn, so you grew up in small town Nova Scotia, as we
Hmm.
both did. You had a plan for your life.
Hmm.
Were you planning on living in Quebec, marrying a chef, growing an awesome business, and being a mom at the same time? And how many broken necks and plot twists got us to here?
um, it's funny you say that. Like, I don't know what my plan for my life was. I think I look back on being, a young graduating high school, trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, and I really had no sense of what the future held realistically. Like, I thought I was going to go to law school. Went to university, did pre-law, like the pre-law class, and I was like, oh my God, this is so fucking boring and I'm going to be terrible at this. And I didn't really have any type of backup plan. I had no interest in business, didn't take one business course in all of university. I thought business was spreadsheets and analysis and boring. And so I really wouldn't have predicted I ended up here. Like a lot of people, I had kind of this one person that made me see the world a little bit differently and opened up some possibility for me. So when I'd say I was probably like 22. I was working in a restaurant, no sense of what was next. I had an English degree. I didn't want to go teach overseas. I didn't want to be a teacher. And so I had this, I guess she would be a mentor. She was the owner of the restaurant. She was a young woman, incredibly impressive, had gone and was living in the UK doing finance, but loved food and came back and opened her own restaurant at 28 and really an inspiring person. And she said to me one day, she's like, what are you going to do next? And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, you're great with people. I had been doing some creative writing and posting it on Facebook. And so she'd seen some of my writing. And she said, you should consider PR. And I was like, huh, I never really thought about PR. And I actually went home and Googled what is PR because I really had no idea. And I didn't necessarily want her to know that. But that led me to doing a master's in PR, discovering marketing, starting a business. And so it's funny that the best plan that you have for your life oftentimes is based on this very narrow perspective of what you think you want. And once you get to experience and taste that a little bit, you realize that it's often not what you want. And then you need to pivot, which I certainly did. And, fast forward 17 years, like I started a business, started freelance marketing, built an agency, built a bunch of companies. Like all of this, I realized I'm an entrepreneur and I'm an entrepreneur who loves marketing. But if you would have told me back when I was 20 years old, like you're going to be an entrepreneur with like who's deeply, deeply obsessed with marketing, I'd be like, what? You don't know, that's not happening. So yeah, best laid plans.
I relate a lot to that. I initially out of the gate was going to be a military pilot. That was the
Hmm.
path that I was going, and yeah, certainly not there now. So, um, yeah, and I was curious too about the educational side because obviously,
Hmm.
like, I started at King's College doing English. I didn't
Hmm.
know about the jump to PR through
Hmm.
your mentor, so that's awesome. Just to switch gears a little bit. So you talk a lot about buyer psychology. I mean, that is really your domain. What's the last thing that you bought that surprised you? And when your brain caught up and
Mhm.
realized, what were you thinking about at that point?
Hmm. It's a good question. I'm thinking because I bought a few things recently with the holidays coming up. You know, you're buying gifts for others, you're buying things for yourself. I would say there's a purchase I just made recently that I have been like wanting to make for quite a while.
Mhm.
But there's too much friction involved in getting the thing that I wanted. So I guess that could be an interesting one. When I was younger, I kind of had a signature scent. Like, as a woman, sometimes you have that one fragrance that you wear all the time. And mine was Hypnotic Poison by Dior. And it is a beautiful scent, but it's also like quite expensive, that
Mhm.
bottle of perfume. And back when you're like 26 years old and you're obsessed with like, status and all that stuff, you're like a young woman and you like, oh, I'll splurge on that. But now, like as like a mom, like happily married for 13 years, I'm like, I
Mm.
don't know that I need to spend that kind of money. And I'm like, who's even smelling me? Like, so I went to I went to a store in called Zara, which is
Yeah.
a women's clothing store, and they had a basically a mock version of this, but I didn't realize that that's what it was, but I thought it might be because it had a similar name, and I was like, oh, I want that. I want to see if this is like Hypnotic Poison. And it was. And so I bought it and I went through it quickly. And then the Zara store is way across the bridge and it's hard to get to. And so it's kind of like from a buyer psychology perspective, I wanted to get it again. I didn't want to have to drive across the bridge to get it. And I tried to go on the website and I couldn't find exactly which one it was. And so then I was like on Amazon looking for other mock versions. So I'm like, there's got to be other mock versions. And I almost bought a real bottle of it on Amazon, but it was like $250. And I was like, this just seems like way too much money to spend on a fragrance.
Right.
Like, so I'd say that when you think about a buyer's journey, oftentimes we think that there's this like really clear through line and that like people see the thing and they make the decision. But like even with something as like non-essential as a bottle of perfume, like my buying journey has been like decades long because
Mm.
there's the element of like when you're at a different stage in your life, when you're trying to gain status, when you're trying to be seen as desirable, when you're in that kind of like still like primal mating
Hmm.
stage where you're not married yet, you're trying to like maintain interest of your partner. It's like, well, this is something I can super justify spending on. And then later in life, as your priorities change, even though I'm much wealthier now than I was as a young woman, and I can certainly afford to spend it. It's
Hmm.
like the justification of like why would I spend it goes up. So it's one of those fascinating purchases where one of the things you and I both love is customer research and understanding the customer. And so often when you sit down and you actually ask a customer to recreate their buying journey, you
Hmm.
find all sorts of really interesting things that can help you when it comes to marketing and selling your products. So, yeah, simple purchase should be an easy one. And to Zara, if anybody from Zara is listening, it's really hard to buy from your site on mobile. So I actually like tried to buy on mobile, couldn't, had to like wait another week until I finally was like, okay, I'm going to find time to do this on my desktop because it's certainly not a priority. Like I do not need to buy this imitation perfume. So it's not one of the things that goes on my to-do list during the day. So they should really work on their mobile website.
Shout out to Zara then.
Hmm.
Hopefully they're watching and tuning in. Um, to that point, like, do you think enough people are really thinking about that aspect of customer journey?
I think that a lot of people, when they think that they know their customer, they think about demographics. Some marketers think they're pretty fancy because they're also thinking about psychographics. I
Sure.
think that a lot of people are not spending nearly enough time thinking about the competitive landscape that their product exists in
Mm.
and the other options that people have. Because, I don't have to buy Hypnotic Poison. I could buy other perfumes, but I also could decide I want to feel pretty by buying a new lipstick or by like losing weight or like another approach to help me achieve my goal. So I think a lot of times companies and marketers and founders, we don't think enough about the competitive landscape. We think about our direct competitors. Like if they don't buy me and they want to do this thing, they're going to buy this direct competitor, which is very similar to me, but I've got these features that they don't, or like I've got this ability that they don't. But that's not how our customers often think. They're like thinking around like, what is it I actually want to achieve? And the competitive like landscape for them is often a lot vaster.
Hmm.
And the things that actually move the needle are different than what we assume they're going to be. Like we think it's going to be, oh, we put the thing on sale or we change our headline. But oftentimes there's key elements that people are weighing that we hadn't even considered. And if we understood those, it would change dramatically how we approach marketing our product.
Mm. So I think that actually dovetails really interestingly with the next question that I had, which was around what is some common advice that is out there that a lot of people are like, oh, well, you have to do this, that
Mm-hmm.
you just think is blatantly wrong and is holding people back?
How long do we have? There's so much. If we're talking about marketing specifically, and we can talk about the kind of like building a personal brand and content marketing separate, but like if we're talking about marketing specifically, one thing that I think is people are very dogmatic about, but the reality is much more nuanced, is people talk about niching down, right? It's like you've got to niche down. And when most people hear that, they think, okay, like if I'm a service provider, like maybe I'm a copywriter, like I'm going to niche down and I'm just going to write copy for veterinarian clinics. Like that's going to be my niche. And like maybe I'll even get more specific. I'll just do like emails for veterinarian clinics. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but like what's the problem that you're actually solving for them?
Right.
Do you understand what would inspire a vet owner to want to invest in
Hmm.
email writing? Like until you get clear on that, it doesn't matter how niche down you are. And so I think that a lot of people should take more of a problem up approach, because a single solution can often solve problems for multiple target customers. But it's really in focusing on the clear problem that you get to a better outcome. So I'm a big believer of like starting by understanding the problem and then layering on the kind of target customer. So it's like, what problem are you solving and who can you solve that for? That you have unique value, you can offer a unique way of doing it that's going to make it even more valuable for them. Start there. And most people kind of go the opposite route. They go, okay, I do this thing, who can I serve that's going to pay me a lot of money? And that often leads to them choosing things that sound good on paper, but don't necessarily result in what they were hoping for. So I'd say that niche down as kind of a blanket statement is just not nuanced enough for most entrepreneurs, particularly service-based entrepreneurs, who are the ones that tend to kind of fall into that the most.
Yeah. And that the whole perspective of, I know you talk about this, I'm very convinced of it as well. Kind of that pain antidote
Hmm.
perspective is super important because, you know, back to what you were talking about earlier, people have choices, right?
Hmm.
People might be in pain and they can choose to do nothing.
Hmm.
Well, my business isn't growing. I'm a vet. It's not growing. It'll never
Hmm.
grow.
Hmm.
That could be their genuine attitude. So I
Hmm.
think again, that's the importance of actually going and talking to your customers to understand,
Hmm.
or your prospects, to
Hmm.
deeply understand, like, okay, so lay it out for me, help me understand a little bit more, because especially if you've not come from that industry, it's a guess.
Yeah. And I think there's so many great examples of how one little insight from a customer conversation yielded a strategic direction that like was a huge win. So one of my favorite stories is from Snickers. So back like, I think it's like 15 years ago, Snickers has been the number one chocolate bar and is still the number one chocolate bar. But they were starting to lose market share and they were seeing competitors catching up. And so they were like, we need to make a shift. And so they did a focus group. And a lot of marketers have strong opinions on focus groups. Some marketers are like, you need to get the voice of the customer. And like others are like, fuck focus groups. People don't know what they want. My belief is that people don't know what they want oftentimes, but they know what problems that they have.
Mm.
And if you approach a conversation not in validating that people want this thing, but instead exploring what they're doing today to solve that problem, or when they bought your product, what problem they were trying to solve, and you dig in there, you can get a lot of useful insights that help you figure out what they want. So like it's not the customer's job to know what they want. That's and or to figure out what to build. That's your job. But they're experts in their problems. They're experts in their kind of like overarching desires. And when you figure those out, they can shape product design. And so Snickers did a focus group. And one of the things that came out of it was this insight around like just feeling kind of dopey after the afternoon slog and like needing to go and get a pick me up energetically before because they weren't going to have time to have a meal later, and that they chose
Mhm.
Snickers because they're like, well, of all the other things that were in the vending machine, like you've got like Milky Way, you've got Skittles, like Snickers has peanuts. So it's kind of felt like a meal. Like it was the
Right.
closest thing to like a meal, but I knew it would be good and I could eat it fast. And that one insight led to the campaign that Snickers is still using today, 15 years later, which is "You're not you when you're hungry.
Hmm.
Snickers satisfies." Which the whole thing is they found a trigger event, which is that people who are kind of like on the go, in between things, need to grab something quick, can't get a real meal. Snickers is like a better alternative for those people than the other things that are in the vending machine, the other fast grab like stuff at the convenience store. And that one insight led to that brilliant campaign. They wouldn't have come up with that if they didn't know that. So I think that oftentimes we approach our conversations with customers with us kind of trying to use them to
Hmm.
directionally decide what to do, whereas oftentimes the better approach is to just really understand where their challenges are and why they're choosing what they're choosing, and then extrapolate from that what you should do.
Hmm. Just going into conversations, really not having a bias and being curious.
Mhm.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. And we're all biased and we like it's really hard not to be.
Right.
And one of the, well, one of the brilliant things about AI is that I often will see something and I'll have a strong opinion about it out of the gate. And I will take it, like, I'll screenshot it or I'll copy and paste it in and I'll say, like, tell me why this is wrong. And
Hmm.
then also tell me when it's right. Because I want to be able to see both sides because I know I'll learn more that way. But I know that like our brains default to confirmation bias. We seek out information that confirms what we want to be true. And so I think that's a real challenge that as entrepreneurs, we need to kind of like fight our ego, fight our desire to be right. And so if you see something or if you're seeking information, you have to look at, okay, when is this right and when is this wrong? Even just today, I was, having a conversation with Claude about a strategic decision we're making with Unignorable. And I was like, okay, this is what I think I want to do. Like, show me where, like, from a strategic perspective, what are like the opportunities around this, but also like, what are the threats and the risks? What are the things that I'm not considering? What are the gaps in my thinking? And it's really helpful because
Hmm.
before we'd have to do that. I'm a verbal processor, so I like to talk things out. Like I don't often know what I am thinking until I like really sit down and talk through it with somebody. Um, and we before you'd have to have a person to do that with, whether it be a coach or a consultant or your business partner. And now it's this kind of cool environment where you can just do that anytime it works for you. It's not always the best advice. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
damn wrong. And you'll be like, well, what about this? And it'll be like, oh, you're right. What about that? But it's certainly for us verbal processors, it's a nice consideration.
I had one of those moments yesterday when I was dealing with something factual and I was
Hmm.
95% sure I was correct and I was getting the
Hmm.
wrong answer. And I
Hmm.
provided the link and it was like, oh, yes, you're right. Sorry about
Hmm.
that. So, yes,
Hmm.
AI can be wrong for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
So like way wrong. But like the nice thing is at least it doesn't come with all of the biases and emotions that we complex humans have.
yes. Yeah. So, Caitlin, we're talking about plans and pivots today.
Hmm.
You've gone through a whole number of different interesting incarnations in your business life. I'm
Hmm.
curious if we can unpack maybe one of the most important pivots that you've undertaken and maybe what you can tell us about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that probably the biggest that led me to where what I'm doing today, and I think it'll be really interesting for the audience, is that initially, so as you know, I had previously done a BC backed tech company. It looked great from the outside. We were growing fast, like, everybody was excited about it. Forbes was calling it the next LinkedIn for women, and it was not working and it failed, and I had to go bankrupt. And so, like, after that experience, I was a pretty broken and sad person. And I was trying to figure out what was next. And I wasn't ready to get a job. I actually didn't feel like I had like energy to bring to a job. And so I was like, okay, I'll go back to consulting. I'd previously had a brand consultancy. And so I went back to consulting, and my plan at the time, after working with a bunch of companies, I sat down with these brilliant founders and I found this commonality, which was that they just didn't understand their customers well enough. And they often didn't know who they were going after. They didn't know why those people chose them. And yet they were moving forward really quickly, spending a lot of time and money building software. And it wasn't clear that they were heading in the right direction. And they were way more focused on their solution than the problems they were solving for customers. And so I was like, this is a consistent problem. I want to learn more about this. This led me to discover Jobs to be Done, which is this really brilliant framework for understanding customer choice. And, people don't buy products because they want product. They buy a product to get a job done. And when you really understand the job they're trying to get done, you can design better solutions and market them more effectively. So I discovered Jobs to be Done. And my plan at that time was I'm going to build a insights agency. So I started doing some work around this space. The plan was I'm going to build an agency. I'm going to work with like startups. I'm going to do customer research for them. I'm going to feed it to them. Like I'll do it in kind of like a productized way. And it sounded like really great. And as I was planning this, I was in the early stages of building it out. I decided I would start a newsletter so that I could start attracting future prospective clients. Because at the time I was doing a lot of kind of like one-to-one consulting projects and group trainings. So that was kind of the core of my business. I was like, I'm going to start this newsletter, start kind of attracting potential clients. And I was like, I don't want to do a newsletter about research because for most people, particularly the clients I wanted to work with, research is a project. It's not something that they are always doing, although they probably would do better if they were. But it's a project. So like if I want them to sign up for a newsletter, I want them to sign up and I want them to open it every week, not just sign up when they've got a project around research and then forget about it, 3 weeks later. And so I was like, what is something that if you're trying to do research, what job are you trying to get done? Well, you want to understand what works with your customers so you can sell more stuff, right? Okay. So if that's the job you're trying to get done through research, what other ways can you get that done? Well, behavioral science, understanding buyer psychology, the psychology of decision making. So I decided to make the newsletter about buyer psychology. And that led to like a bigger response from people than I expected. We went from 0 subscribers. First year, I think we got to like 8,000 without really intentionally trying to grow it. Like there was not a lot of meaningful growth, like intention around growing it. And then once I realized, oh, this is an opportunity. Brands started reaching out to me wanting to sponsor the newsletter. I was like, oh, this is actually an opportunity. And I ended up pivoting and focusing on building a media company, an education company instead of the productized service. So I think like the underlying thing there for your audience is like, I was still helping people get the same job done, but the way that I went about it changed. And it turned out that I think there's actually more interest and demand for what we're doing with Why We Buy as a media company model than I would have seen for the research agency I wanted to build. I think that the research agency was one of those things where it's like, this should be the way people do business.
Right.
Because companies should be doing more research. But I've always seen historically, it's hard to get them to do it. And so it's like, how do you sell people what they want and then give them what they need? And I think that shift ended up being a smart pivot. It's smart looking backwards, but I don't know that it felt strategic at the time, but there's also luck involved there.
Sure. Who would you say? So that's a continuum of about 10 years, little less than 10 years, right?
Where are
then
we
to
at today? We're going to be going into 2026. I started Why We Buy in 2020. So I had been doing the consulting and training for like probably 2 years previous to that, like a year and a half probably.
Right. My question is, within sort of that specific journey, is there an unsung hero who was behind the scenes,
Oh,
or,
always
or a
my
key
husband.
person? Yeah.
Yeah, my husband. I think that for me, I don't think that I would have been able to continue doing the things that I'm doing at the level that I've been doing them at without the support of my husband, because I am an anxious person by nature. I can be very self-critical. Like I need like he's an incredible figure for me because he's just really supportive, really believes in me and believes in me when I don't believe in myself. And so I think that for me, his contribution is like, he's the unsung hero, but I want to sing about him because he's huge in my journey.
Well, and certainly, I mean, even just from my own interactions with him, he's such an incredible ball of energy. And just, you know, when he walks into a room, he's one of those people that it's like, okay,
Hmm.
let's make it happen. So I
Yeah,
really,
he's fun.
I can totally understand how having a partner like Jason would just be, you need some air in your tires. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, he's really, really good at that. And like he's probably one of the most extroverted people I've ever met. Like he went to a football game with a couple of friends and they had three seats. One of them was really good, but it was alone. And the other
Mhm.
two were like nosebleeds, but they were together. And they were like, you take the good one, you'll actually like interact with people and have fun. Like,
Right.
and he's like, okay. And like he went and like made like nine new best friends. For me, the idea of going to an enormous like sport arena and
Right.
sitting alone is like that's my worst nightmare. Like I'm like, what if I have to get out of here and how am I going to get out? Like and like that's yeah, that would be my worst nightmare. For him, he's like, oh, new friends. Like this is a great opportunity. So yeah, he's a character.
Yeah, it's like my wife is always asking when we go out somewhere, I'll just strike up a conversation with somebody, and by
Hmm.
the end, I'm like, so here's my LinkedIn, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what are you doing? Like, anyway, um, what's I know we've got a few more minutes here. What's one of the common blind spots that you see? I kind of feel like I might know the answer. I'm not going to lead the witness though. Um, what do people struggle with? What's a common blind spot? I know Unignorable
Hmm.
2.0, you're kind of working towards some things. So
Hmm.
curious on like what your perspective is on that common blind spot.
I think that you just can't bottle your own brilliance. Like, I think at the end of the day, we are way too in our heads about our like when you think about it from like a personal brand perspective, like what am I going to be known for and like how do I talk about what I do and like I think that we are way too in our heads, we're way too emotional about it. It feels like a huge decision. We overthink it. And it feels incredibly personal because it is incredibly personal, right? It's like, well, this is like me putting myself out there in the world. This is my voice. Like I want people to perceive me a certain way. It feels very risky to get it wrong. And ultimately, it's an iterative process. You're going to learn from putting things out there in the world and hearing your audience's feedback. But I think that to think that you can just figure it out on your own is oftentimes people a really slow and painful process because you just can't see yourself clearly. And so if you have the opportunity to either get feedback from a smart friend or work with an organization like ours, the opportunity to have somebody else who's smart and understands your world and like gets to know like your market landscape, to be able to have them see you, they are not mired in all of the self-doubt and the what ifs and like the emotion of it. They're able to like oftentimes just have this like laser clear vision of the way you should be showing up in the world. And I think that a lot of us would benefit from seeking help on that,
Mhm.
whether it comes to our personal brand strategy and oftentimes when it comes to the business strategy too. And I think that for me, I've often been resistant to that
Mhm.
because this is what I do, right? Like this is always the work. Like I started like my first business was a branding agency, and like then I had a restaurant consulting business, but we did the strategy side. So I'm like, I'm a strategist, like I'm a branding person, like I should be able to do this.
Mhm.
And even for me, it's incredibly hard to do it for myself, right? It's painful. Like I'm in the process right now of thinking through how why we buy evolves. Can it evolve separate from me? Do I sell it? Do I bring somebody in as the face of it? Like and like trying to figure all this out. And then I hired a an advisor. He's been incredible for my business. His name's Chris, and he was previously a marketer, but then kind of moved into more of an operations role, worked with people like Cody Sanchez and Dan Martell, and like
Mhm.
really understands the creator space. And like within a few calls, I'm like, whoa, clarity. Like I needed somebody else to be able to see things and like simplify. And I think so often we are too proud to ask for help. That's certainly been my problem in the past. We think that we shouldn't need it because we're already experts at this thing. Like, why would the expert need help? But we
Right.
do, we need it. And so I think for a lot of people, your blind spot is yourself. Your blind spot is your own strategic direction because there's just too much fog for you to see it clearly. And somebody else that doesn't have all of that emotion can often get you there so much faster.
Hmm. A lot of quotes in what you just said. I think I wrote down, this might be your book title when you write it. You can't bottle your own brilliance. I
I've been
really
working
like
on
that.
that one. That
Yeah.
one's that's in our sales deck for Unignorable. A fun fact. So on page, I have a post coming out about this on page 21 of our sales deck. Now I hadn't done sales for years. Like I've
Hmm.
not done like a actually having to sell somebody since like back in my training days. So it's probably been like 7 years.
Right.
Um, and for this new version of Unignorable, it's not a small investment. It's a meaningful investment. It's not the kind of
Right.
thing I thought we could just sell with a Google Doc or a sales page. Like people would want to hear the pitch. They'd want to understand. We'd have to explain all of what it is. And we had 5 beta spots. 4 of them we filled without ever even pitching it. They just came inbound. They're like, I know you're working on something. You've been hinting about it. Like, I want to work with you. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then we did one, we ended up filling the 5th spot. And I did get to use the pitch deck that I spent all this time creating. But on page 21, it says, what's our promise to you? Our promise to you is that you'll stop chasing clients and they'll
Hmm.
come to you pre-sold on your worldview. And that really is the goal of personal branding. It's about changing people's minds, changing the way that they see the world. And then once you do that for somebody and they start to associate this new perspective with it's so much easier to get them to want to work with you. And so that bottle your own brilliance line, that's from that deck because I started working on the deck and I was like, this is a good line. I've got to show people why they can't do this for themselves, like why they would want to work with us as opposed to just trying to figure it out on their own. And that came from that. But I didn't really get to use it anywhere else yet. So you might see it show up in other places.
It's a good line. Caitlin, we're gonna do a quick lightning round.
Hmm.
First thing that comes to mind. Um, we'll see how we do. You're
Okay.
going on a desert island by yourself. You get 3 items. What are you bringing?
By myself. I'm assuming there's food. Do I have to think
There's
about food?
there's food and electricity.
Okay. Well, I'm probably bringing my cell phone so I can get off the island, let people know I'm marooned. Probably bringing my Kindle to kill some time. And I don't know, maybe a lighter.
All good choices. Good survival instincts. I like it. Speaking of survival, it's 3 a.m. and you're hungry. What are you eating?
uh, if I'm in Nova Scotia, donair, because we do not have those in Quebec where I live now. And they're the best 3 a.m. food on the planet.
Funny enough, I actually had a question about donairs in here and I scrubbed it. So, a donair is a type of kebab for anybody that isn't familiar with it. Your first job.
First job was working at a whale watching booth. I live in a tourist town and there was a whale watching tour and I worked in the booth and told people about the whales. Let me just tell you, you don't see a lot of whales most of the time in Nova Scotia. You see a lot of other cool stuff though.
Yeah, for sure. If you had to do another job than what you're doing right now, what would you be doing?
I've thought about this because I considered making a big change recently, and I really don't honestly know. I mean, I think that I would love to do interior design and do it for businesses, like to do
Hmm.
corporate branding that included interiors. I would love that.
Maybe we can go in the business together. I used to sell flooring and paint, so there we go.
Oh, there you go.
Um, what's your top secret talent that nobody knows about?
I wouldn't say that people don't know about it, but I'd say that one of the things that makes me really effective at certain things and very, very ineffective at others is that I'm really good at connecting things. So I don't know. I've recently learned that I have ADHD. I think that that's a common trait. Like for me, my brain's kind of like a web. And once I see something, I can kind of like extrapolate out and be like, well, if this is happening and like, well, this is happening in this market and this is what the common saying is about this. And I can very quickly get from one thing to another thing that doesn't seem connected, but I can see the connections. And I think that that gives me some kind of secret powers when it comes to the work I do.
Hmm. Last one, a hill you'll die on about marketing.
Talk to your customers. I think that a lot of people waste a lot of time trying to figure it out on their own, thinking they're smarter. And if you really want clarity, talk to the people who are buying your thing. I was nervous about doing these sales calls for Unignorable because again, I hadn't done this in years, but
Mhm.
I knew that I would learn so much faster by actually talking to people as
Right.
opposed to just sending them to a sales page with the buy link. I was like, I want to hear their questions. I want to hear their objections. I want to see where the message doesn't land because
Mhm.
all of that's going to get us to a better experience and a better pitch way faster than I would get there on my own. So I think that a lot of folks, one of the really big second order benefits of building a personal brand online and posting content is that you get so much direct feedback from your target audience because they're commenting on your posts, they're asking questions, they're sharing a point of view, they're saying, this worked for me, this didn't, or how would you approach this? And I think that's a huge benefit that a lot of people don't consider. But
Mhm.
I think that that's been one of the things that's allowed me to grow a lot faster just because I get such an influx of feedback from my target customer on the types of things I'm talking about. So it's a real big opportunity that goes beyond what most people think about when they're thinking about creating content online.
Mm. Two last questions, Caitlin. Uh, as you look back the last 5 years, what's the
Mhm.
most important or most surprising thing that you've learned about yourself?
Well, I had a baby, so I have a 4-year-old now. And I think one of the things that I learned is that I'm just so grateful to get to be a mom. I wasn't sure that I was ready or going to be a good mom. I had this kind of perception of myself and I was like, I don't know if this is something that scares the hell out of me and I don't think I'm going to be good at it. And you know what? I think what I learned is that I had some limiting beliefs about myself and I didn't see myself as clearly as I could. And I think I'm a really good mom. And so I think that oftentimes what we think we're going to want and how we think we're going to respond in a situation, you can surprise yourself. You can end up being quite different than you expected.
Mm, I love that. And yeah, I mean, outside looking in, you and Jason look like you're hitting it out of the park. So
We have a lot of fun.
kudos
We
to
also,
you.
our son's, he's Jason's son. So he's easy, he's goofy, he's fun. Like he's also, he has like the streaks of me too. He doesn't like to get a lot of help. He can
Right.
be emotionally, he's definitely has ADHD, but
That's awesome. Final question. What's the legacy that you're building?
I think that I want to help entrepreneurs see themselves more clearly because people who are trying to make meaningful impact in the world and make the world better, they if they're not able to articulate that in a way that draws in the people that they can help, then they can't help those people. So I think the legacy is helping people to see themselves clearly and articulate what they need to say to help the people that they want to help. And so if I am able to help more people do that, then the world will broadly speaking be better.
That's amazing. Caitlin, it's always so much fun to connect with you. Thank you for joining Plans and Pivots. Um, if people want to check out maybe like one specific thing that you're working on, what should they be
Mhm.
looking at?
I would say to join the newsletter. The newsletter is going to be the best insights into why your customers buy. You're going to see how the top brands in the world are doing this alongside like small businesses. You'll learn about all of the behavioral science stuff, the actual cognitive biases, what's happening in your buyer's brain. And then you'll get to follow along with everything we're doing because we often share updates there. So join the newsletter, go to learnwhywebuy.com. And as soon as you hit that homepage, you'll see a place to sign up.
That's awesome. We'll be sure to put that in the description as well. And I can personally vouch for it. I'm a reader. Every time I read something, I'm like, okay, that's good. I need to process what that means for me, and it's very
Hmm.
actionable, which I really like.
Hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jonathan. This
Awesome.
has been a blast.
Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day. Thank you for tuning in as well. And we will see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye bye.